Welcome to the Daily Insider right here on VegasInsider.com. Kevin Rogers with you as we take a look at a lot of college football and NFL. College football week 1 now in the books after Ole Miss embarrassed Louisville last night. You had a great game in Tallahassee Sunday night between Notre Dame and Florida State. We'll talk about all of that straight ahead. And week 1 of the NFL, we're just 2 days away. Cowboys and the Buccaneers in Tampa. So that should be a very fun matchup. And we will discuss a lot of things football related. And we bring on our guests today. We're really excited for these two guests, Mark Franco and Jonathan Jorcin, two handicappers from VegasInsider.com, get their thoughts on the weekend and also look ahead to this upcoming weekend as we bring them both in. Gentlemen, good to have you on. And I guess, Mark, I'll start with you. Just a couple bullet points, your impressions from week 1 in college football.
Living out here on the West Coast, I think, there was a lot of good games, but the most impressionable game, I guess I would say, that I came out of the weekend was UCLA. Not just beating LSU, but in the fashion that they beat LSU. They totally dominated that game. Did not look like a Pac-10 team. Pac-10 teams are known for being soft, and UCLA was physical right from that first quarter, and we know LSU's defense wasn't good. Last year they were horrible. How much were they going to be improved? But, UCLA really dominated that game. So I think we finally might have along with Oregon, a really good team in the Pac-10 in UCLA, and Chip Kelly finally maybe getting the job done.
John, what about your thoughts on what you saw from this past weekend in college football?
I think for me, one of the most surprising games was that Georgia-Clemson game. Not that Georgia won the game, but kind of in the manner that they won the game, 10-3, no offensive touchdowns for Clemson. It was kind of a surprising game. I don't want to overreact, and this is the end of the Clemson run, but it definitely is telling when you can't score any points and you put a beat on the board. So that was, to me, the most surprising game of the weekend. I wasn't even on that game at all, by the way. That was kind of a sit back and watch game for me, but that was just kind of telling for me.
Yeah, and both those games, guys, when you look and see, especially with Georgia and Clemson, where not that you would expect it to be a shootout, but the last thing anybody would have expected would have been one touchdown, and it comes from the defensive side. And now the loss of Trevor Lawrence, no longer at Clemson. I guess now, the thoughts are, guys, that, this offense needs a lot of work. And yes, you're playing a Georgia team that's one of the top teams in the country, but also to have 3 points scored in that opening game for a team that we normally see in the Final Four is pretty disappointing.
Georgia just played so tremendously on the defensive side of the football. I mean, talking about getting after the quarterback, how many sacks did they have? I think it was 8, if I'm not mistaken. Clemson was under pressure just the entire afternoon, the entire evening. It was a good game for me. I had Georgia plus the points in that one.
Yeah, they had 7 sacks that game. Yeah, so they really got after him. I leaned Clemson. I really was leaning Clemson. I just didn't like the number. I know 2.5. I just thought that was a weird number. It's kind of a funky number for me, so I laid off. But it was a good game defensively for both teams. I just think that this could be overreaction. Clemson come out next game and put up 40. We're kind of wait and see on them right now.
Now, as far as the other SEC power, I guess the power of college football, what Alabama did against Miami, I mean, it was just wire to wire, easy. And you see what Bryce Young is, just, again, falling in that line of Tua and Mac Jones, just someone who's going to be a star at Alabama. I guess, and I'll start with you, John, on this one. Surprised. I mean, the final score, they win by 31, but as far as just going wire to wire and seeing what the Crimson Tide did.
Maybe 10 years ago, I'd be like, oh, wow, you got Miami come. No, I'm not surprised. And who's surprised anymore? They do this every year. I think one of the best bets in the last 3 seasons of college football is taking Alabama first half. They come out, they show you who they are. And as far as Miami, Miami really hasn't showed me anything in the last couple of seasons to back them in any kind of spread. Go in confidence, say I think Miami's going to come in and dominate this game. It's Alabama. They're the best in college football. They've been the best for the last 10 seasons. They're perennial powerhouse. This doesn't surprise me at all. The wire to wire doesn't surprise me at all. I think they scored 27 points in the first 12 or 15, 20 minutes of the game. So to me, it was just like another Alabama game. And I'm kind of a guy, like, I like to see them lose. So I'm always kind of cheering against them. But that doesn't surprise me anymore.
Thing that I took away from that game was Alabama. It was just like, let's get off the plane, let's go take care of business, and let's go back home. They're all business-like, just as they always are under Nick Saban. And like Jonathan said, I mean, they just reload and re-up on talent every year. So there's no question Alabama is going to be the dominant team in the SEC and on all of college football.
Now, other games, I guess, that were, I don't want to say off the radar, guys, but, when you look at, teams that were upset, Washington, Georgia Tech. I don't want to say Vanderbilt's upset because Vanderbilt's one of the worst teams in the country, but they were heavy favorites and they ended up losing. But as far as the teams that were heavy favorites, which ones kind of stuck out to you when you said, oh, wow, like, I did not see that coming. Even you use North Carolina as an example if you wanted. They were a shorter favorite. But were there one or two favorites that lost that you kind of said, whoa, I didn't see that one coming? I'll start with you, Mark.
I think Montana beating Washington was a big step up for a team like that to beat a Pac-10 team. Not that Washington is is any great team, but they were ranked in the top 25, and Montana just was able to upset them. And I think those kids just played with a lot more heart, and Washington probably overlooked them, no question.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same one. That's the obvious one, right? You get a ranked Washington team. They're supposed to be really good this year. I'll go with another one. I thought, and this was a team that didn't win the game, but they actually played wire to wire, and they lost by 6, and that's Northern Iowa. I don't think anybody expects Northern Iowa to stick around with Iowa State, especially since, including myself, I actually think Iowa State can win the Big 12. I think they are a dark horse for the. I did think they were a dark horse for the championship, the Final Four. So I think to me that stuck out with me, that they were able to stick out with Iowa State, who comes into this year with such high expectations, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do with that, because I don't think Iowa State's a program in football that's come in perennially to deal with those expectations. So now that was kind of a shock to me. That was my biggest, I think, takeaway from the weekend from that standpoint, is the big dogs kind of coming through.
Now, looking ahead to a couple games this weekend, guys, and you have a couple of Pac-12, Big Ten matchups. Ohio State faces Oregon. They were supposed to play last year. Obviously, the pandemic, put that one on hold. But they're going to go to the Horseshoe coming up this weekend. And Ohio State's laying 14. They beat Minnesota last week in kind of a back-and-forth game that Ohio State just pulled away. And, Oregon is always going to be very competitive, but do you think this number's too high? Is it just right? And Jonathan, your thoughts on that?
This is actually one of my games I'm looking at real heavily. I was actually on Fresno State last week at Oregon. I think Fresno State's a very good team, especially in the Mountain West. They kind of play in the tougher conference in the Mountain West, and they playing in the West side. So they're projected 4th. I think they're going to be a lot better. So I actually had them going wire to wire, but this week I'm actually looking at Oregon. I think Oregon comes in, and that is a lot of points. And I think if you look at the athletes on the field, Ohio State doesn't outrank or outclass Oregon the way they might have a few years ago. I think Oregon's got a lot of athletes on the field, and you can't go and every year it's, okay, Ohio State's got the best player on the field. I don't think that's the case this year. I think Oregon has a real strong chance to go into the shoe and keep it competitive. And I'm not saying they win the game, because it is in Ohio State. The homes, they're probably going to be a pretty rowdy crowd out there. So, but I do think 14 might be a little too high. It's not a pick yet, but it's kind of looking that way, that it might be a ride up. I got to do a couple more things, to ensure that. But I think for me, Oregon's kind of in the bounce back spot, because I think a lot of people kind of expected them to beat Fresno State a little bit more than they did.
And Mark, your thoughts on Ohio State and Oregon?
I'm going to lean with Jonathan on this one as well. I think line is up to 14.5 now, just about everywhere here in Vegas. I even see 115 out there. Tough place to go play is Ohio State. There's no question about it. But I think Oregon has enough athletes to keep this game competitive. Ohio State was not all that impressive against Minnesota. I guess in the second half, their offense came to life. But I haven't been able to really do any work on this game yet this early in the week. But I would definitely have to have a slight lean towards Oregon catching those points. And I wouldn't be willing to lay it with a big favorite like Ohio State.
Now, looking at the other Pac-12 Big Ten game, and we talk about Washington, how I don't know if it's a look-ahead spot against Montana last week or what, but, again, inexcusable to lose that home opener to an FCS school, but Washington did that, and now they go to the Big House to play Michigan. So now you get the Huskies in, you would think, a focused spot after getting embarrassed last week. And Mark, I'll stay with you. Michigan, a 6-point favorite here. Big game for Harbaugh. It's always a big game for him facing Washington.
We'll see if Harbaugh can finally, make this Michigan program proud again and do some things here, not only during the course of the regular season, but maybe make the playoffs somehow, which is possible for Michigan. But this number seems quite right to me. I would expect it to go higher. I wouldn't expect the line to come down. So if you like Michigan in this game, I would recommend you grab it early rather than late. Michigan is still a lot of eye test. One game doesn't really do anything for me. We still need to see how good Michigan can actually be this year, how good we know their defense is good. And emotionally, how does Washington handle this game, having to go on the road after losing at home, like you said, against Montana? It could be a tough spot for the Huskies.
John?
So this game's interesting for me. I'm in Texas now, but I actually went to high school and grew up in Reno, Nevada. So I kind of got a little soft spot for Cade McNamara out of Reno, Nevada. So I'm kind of interested to see how he does. He's a junior now. This is his team. And then you do get Washington, but you get him off a loss that shouldn't have happened, shouldn't have been a close game. This is going to be an interesting game for me because it's basically going to be very telling of what kind of Washington team we're going to have this year. If they go in and they fold and they lose, to me, they're folding shop. So it's going to be a very interesting dynamic in this game, especially when you have Michigan, which I don't think is supposed to be very good this year. Washington, who came in ranked, they're still ranked. They're still at the edge of the rankings right now. It'll be interesting for me to see, but it's definitely a bounce back spot. I think a lot of people might be grabbing, kind of think, Michigan over Washington just because of that bad loss. But I think for me, it would be a bounce back spot play.
Now, taking a look at some of the other matchups inside of college football, we talked about two guys, Iowa and Iowa State, as far as Iowa State struggling last week, Iowa coming up with a big win over Indiana in the start of Big Ten play, and a lot of Big Ten schools already, out of the gate with a conference game. So, the likes of Penn State and Ohio State and Iowa, already 1-0, and Michigan State, that's a good start for them. But now that the Cyclones, who, look, last two seasons, they've struggled with their openers. They lost last year their opener. This year they struggle. So Iowa State, Iowa, the battle of the Hawkeye State. And, John, your thoughts on this rivalry?
Well, so to me, I don't think Indiana's a very good football team. I think they came in, I think they're ranked a lot higher than they should be. And that's off the bat. So I was on Iowa. And I'm not valuing that Iowa game over the Indiana game that high. I think that's a team a game one that they've won in the past, that kind of, -3, -4 type game. They've been really good, especially at Kinnick Stadium. So that to me is not as impressive of a win. So I don't know exactly what team we're going to get. Iowa State to me is where I'm looking at, because that's going to be an interesting dynamic with coming off that narrow win versus Northern Iowa. I think this is a spot where they need to come out and say, like, okay, that was a bad game. We escaped, and let's kind of move forward. And I think for me right now, it's definitely a lean to Iowa State. And I did it this week. I'm not afraid. If it's 3-4 and I'm not crazy about the number, I will money line. I'll lay a little juice to kind of pick up a little bit of extra, possibilities for a win. I'm kind of leaning towards Iowa State. I think this is a game that off a win, at home, Iowa can go on the road and just lay an egg.
Mark?
Well, I hate the number of 4.5. That's one of the worst numbers that you can bet when you're looking at a favorite anyway. But, Iowa State did not play horrible last week. They were just lethargic in that game against Northern Iowa. It just seemed like they didn't come to play. And you mentioned they've struggled with opening weeks. So maybe they come back with a little more fire in their belly this week. And I'm with Jonathan there. I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in what Iowa did. Indiana's a team that came in overrated. They had one good season last year. Granted, it was a good season. Had a really good defense, but Iowa showed that it's just the same old Indiana team. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock like Jonathan in that Iowa win. But I would lean towards Iowa State, especially if the line ticks down a little bit. But I don't think it will.
Now, the final game I want to look at with you guys today for college, Stanford and USC. And obviously, Stanford, guys, we've seen they've taken a few steps back the last few years. Their offense, not very good against Kansas State on Saturday. They were dominated in that game, in a neutral site game in Texas. And USC, they won their opener, but now Stanford goes from – they opened as a pick 'em against K-State. It closed at 3. Now Stanford is a 17.5-point dog against USC, which is always a big game. They play early in the season. And, Mark, your thoughts on this contest? Do you think Stanford can bounce back and at least be competitive against the Trojans?
Not real interested in this game. When you're talking about Pac-12 schools, is there really that much difference? Obviously, USC comes in as the much better team. Stanford struggled under Coach Shaw the last couple of years, like you mentioned. 17.5, a little bit too much rich for my blood. I wouldn't be comfortable taking USC and laying those kind of points, nor would I really be interested in taking Stanford. So this might be a game that we learn a little bit more about USC than we do about Stanford.
John?
I have to agree. First, this game doesn't really interest me at all. I think USC really, in the last few years, they kind of remind me of Texas. They've kind of, every year they have these expectations. They don't live up to them. To me, the game doesn't interest me at all. I will say that I actually was impressed with USC's win over San Jose. I think San Jose is actually a really good team. And so I do believe that they provided a good win. It's too much of a number for me to lay the 17.5, but I also don't like Stanford to go on Stanford either. So this is going to be a very much, watch and, enjoy the game for me.
Now, I want to switch over to the NFL, guys, and we start in 2 nights. We have Cowboys and Buccaneers, which, again, it's always going to be an exciting game when you have Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in the national spotlight coming up on Thursday night. So I'll start with you, Mark, on this one, and your thoughts with the Cowboys and the Buccaneers.
Good way to open up the season. Obviously, we always open up the season with the Super Bowl champs. And the most interesting thing about the Tampa Bay Bucs is they bring everybody back from a Super Bowl winning team, all 22 starters. That's pretty much unheard of now in these days in the NFL with free agency and whatnot. So obviously, a lot of people know that they have that going for them. The Cowboys are a big question mark to me. The Cowboys could be good or the Cowboys could be very bad again. I really see it as a coin flip. Obviously, everything comes down to Dak Prescott. Without Dak Prescott, the Cowboys are going to go nowhere. With Dak Prescott, their offense is good enough, as we've seen in the past, to put up 30 points a game. But has their defense improved? They've made some adjustments on defense. They had a pretty good draft in the defense, got some free agents to go there to Dallas. Even if their defense is slightly improved and they can still have that juggernaut of an offense, they should be around a 500 team, in my opinion. And being around a 500 team, especially in the NFC East, Cowboys can definitely be a playoff team. As far as the Bucs go, everybody just has them rolling, and for good reason, I guess. But, Tampa Bay didn't start off the season like gangbusters last year. They got better, a little bit better, I believe, than Tampa Bay did each and every single week of the season. Right up until playoffs started. They just improved a little bit better on a lot of different positions. And at the end, no question, they were the best team to keep Kansas City out of the end zone. Was probably the most miraculous thing that defense did. And the defense is going to be there again. And Brady's probably healthier this year than he was last year. That's kind of scary to think. I mean, I don't see any reason that Tampa can't roll in this game, but I do have a rule in the NFL. Very seldom am I going to lay over a touchdown, so got to do a little more due diligence. But for me, it would be either take the Bucks or pass on this game.
Jonathan?
I'm the other way. I think I'd take the Cowboys or pass. I think 8's too much and too many. And I also think that the Cowboys, I get it. I'm actually born a Cowboys fan, so I understand the alert. Every year it's their year. And, as a fan, I'm tired of hearing that. So I do believe that if you look at their roster from top to bottom and just look at the first string, they're actually one of the most talented teams in the league. The problem is can they stay healthy? If without Dak Prescott, they are a 2-15 team, okay? They also lost a lineman that won't be in the game, so they're going to struggle maybe a little bit on the line. It's really kind of hit or miss because then once they get to those reserves, they're just not the same team. If they can stay healthy, and I do think that 8, even with Zach Martin out of the game, is still too many, I do think the Cowboys is the play. It's either Cowboys or pass. They're too talented. I think they have too many – I think Dak Prescott knows this is a year he just got paid. He has to perform, and he has to perform well. So I think Ezekiel Elliott needs to get back on track. He's really, if you look at him, it's actually, I think he's the only running back in the last 25 years to regress as much as he had in his first 5 seasons. Every single year, he's gone down on his yards per carry. So I think this is going to be a tall tale for the Cowboys in the opening week to see if they can hang with the Buccaneers. But last year we saw week 1, Tom Brady doesn't care about week 1. I'm not saying he's not out there trying to win the game, but they're out there trying to make adjustments. They're out there seeing what works, what doesn't work, and they will adjust throughout the season. They ended up losing the first week. They were down by a lot. I think they made it a little closer. I think they cut the gap to 11, I think, at the end of the game, but they were down by 3 scores. In the second half of that game. So I just don't think they're going to go out there, and I don't think they're going to blow out the Cowboys by 8.
Yeah, before I let you guys go, is there a week 1 best bet, or at least one game that you're focusing on now? I know you're going to have plenty of picks to put up on Vegas Insider this weekend, but I'll start with you, Mark. One game you're keeping an eye on in the NFL?
One of the things here in Vegas is we've been looking at these lines for week 1 now for months as they come out earlier and earlier every year. So, I've been staring at week 1 lines for the entire summer. The one game that stood out to me early, and it still stands out to me here late as we're just a few days away from the start of the season, I like Tennessee laying 3. Be a little patient. I think the line may drop to 2.5. I don't see it going to 3.5. I just think Tennessee, just like last year, they're going to be a machine behind the running back Derrick Henry, and Tannehill will do enough to keep that ball spread around with that offense. Thing for Tennessee is they're hoping they can improve on the defensive side of the ball this year to make them better come playoff time. And I'm not sold on the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of people are drinking their Kool-Aid. A lot of people think they could be a playoff team this year. Not a big fan of the coach. I think Kyler Murray's a solid quarterback. Arizona's defense is still not great. So I think it's a tough spot for the Cardinals to go on the road in Tennessee and get a win. So I'd like Tennessee minus 3 for week 1, Kev.
Jonathan?
So I'm not gonna. I don't have any play to give out, but I will have a couple games. I'll tell you a couple games I'm looking at, and one of them is the Niners and the Lions. If I were gonna bet this game right now, I think I'm going on the Lions, and I have no reason to tell you why to bet the Lions. I just think the line is way too low. They're almost baiting you to take this pick. I can't even name you. I don't think I can name you more than 2 players on the team, and I can name the tight end and the kicker. And then of course the quarterback they just got. That's it. So I don't know why this is only minus or plus 7.5. I know they're at home. I think for me it's uncertainty at the quarterback position in San Francisco with either Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance. I think they're gonna go Jimmy G. He probably plays most of the game. If he struggles at any point in time, it's bad. I think they're putting in Trey Lance. So I just think that the 7.5 is almost Vegas telling me bet the Niners, and I'm over here like, I don't know if I want to do that. So that to me is kind of a game I'm looking at. And of course, the other one is Washington and the Chargers. I actually really, really like the Chargers this year. I think Justin Herbert's going to get things going with Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen. I think they're going to have a really good team, and he's going to sling the ball around. He did last year. This is his second year now. Hopefully he doesn't have the rookie slumps. But the thing is they're playing in Washington, and teams that usually play in West Coast to East Coast that have that early morning time slot typically don't do too well. And the Washington football team does have a really good front seven. So I think that game's going to be really interesting. You either going to value, what Herbert's going to do, or what you think the Washington front seven is going to do at home with the West Coast team coming in.
Gentlemen, very good information and insight, and we could find your picks at vegasinsider.com for college football and the NFL as well as Major League Baseball. With everything going on now, everything really ramping up. Mark, Franco, Jonathan, Jorcin, thank you so much for joining us here. And we'll have you again on the Daily Insider soon.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate
All
it.
right, fellas. And very good stuff out of both you guys. And look, you know what? There's just so much going on now with the NFL and with college. And now you're getting to a lot of interesting matchups coming into this week in college football. When you talk about, look, we mentioned Washington and Michigan, and yeah, you go back and in retrospect, would you have thought that Washington was going to lose to Montana? No, you were not going to think that at all. But also when you look at the likes of Georgia Tech, they lost to Northern Illinois. When you look at, again, Vanderbilt, they lost at home. That there's a lot of teams that are, even Mississippi State almost lost at home to Louisiana Tech. And they were up 14-0 out of the chute in that game. And then they trailed and had to make a comeback to even win that game. Forget about laying 21 points, but just to win the game straight up. So obviously a lot going on, to keep an eye on in college football. Now let's take a quick look at baseball for today. And we'll begin with the Mets and the Marlins as they meet up in Miami. And for some reason, the Mets have woken up from the dead. And look, it's probably too little too late for the Mets at this point. And they're back at 500, which is good. And they went to Washington. They did stub their toe yesterday, losing 4-3 to the Nationals. Look, the Mets, they had that disastrous run against the Dodgers and Giants in a 4-series set where they went to LA and San Francisco. They got them both at home, and everything fell apart for them during that stretch. So then they play the Nationals, the Marlins, the Nationals, and they've come back to life a little bit. But again, when Atlanta made a great run, even the Phillies have played better, and the Phillies blew out the Brewers yesterday. That the Mets, in the end, they just won't be headed to the playoffs. So it's Carlos Carrasco going for the Mets tonight. Edward Cabrera goes for the Marlins, and Miami comes in almost off a sweep over the Phillies. They took 2 of 3 in that series, but Miami's played a little better at home recently, but the Mets favored there. Now the Braves, a heavy favorite against the Nationals. Now, we know the Braves have cleaned up against teams like Washington and Miami and Baltimore, and they just went to Colorado, and they took 2 of 3 in that series from the Rockies. So they played better in that series. And look, you're playing a Colorado team that is one of the best in baseball at home. They're terrible on the road, but they're one of the best at home. And, they split that series with Colorado. They split that series. A couple of one-run losses by the Braves, and they won the finale 9-2. But they end that road trip at 2-5 against LA and Colorado. They played San Francisco before that, so a very tough stretch for the Braves. And now they get Washington, they get Miami, and they get Colorado, who's terrible on the road. They get all of that at home. So now the Braves can kind of pick back up and get their stuff together. Max Fried and Paolo Espino on the mound. And Fried, he's been very good of late, even though he picked up a no decision in a loss to the Dodgers his last time out. And the Braves before that had won his previous 5 starts. So he's been pitching well. He shut down the Nationals a few times this season, and he's a heavy favorite tonight. The Phillies face the Brewers in Milwaukee, and Philadelphia has won all 5 matchups with the Brewers so far this season, including yesterday. Zach Wheeler finally got on track, a 12-0 shutout of the Brewers, and that came on the heels of Milwaukee winning with a grand slam on Sunday against St. Louis. And look, they're facing an elite pitcher in Zach Wheeler, and he finally pitched well. Brandon Woodruff got tagged for a few home runs. I mean, honestly, the 12-0 final could have been worse. The Brewers, or the Phillies rather, had some opportunities to score runs in other innings. They didn't do it early. They busted out late. But Philadelphia, they're 5 above 500. They're still hanging around behind the Braves. This is not exactly the easiest series here against Milwaukee, but after that, they get the Rockies at home, they get the Cubs at home, and they go to the Mets. So the Phillies can, if they can just, they got a big win yesterday against the Brewers. And with Aaron Nola going today, you can grab another one, go 2 of 3 against Milwaukee. Maybe Philadelphia has a shot. But again, like I mentioned with the Braves, they have some manageable series coming up. I don't like saying easy, but manageable series coming up. And it's going to be a good race towards the end with the Phillies and the Braves in the National League East. And just want to see, they play again in Atlanta, the second to last series of the season. So the Phillies and Braves still have 3 games left. And the Phillies, after this, they get 4 with the Rockies at home, who are terrible on the road. They got the Cubs, who actually are winning a little bit, but the Cubs are still struggled. At the Mets, Baltimore at home, Pittsburgh at home, at Atlanta, and at Miami. So it's not over for the Phillies. They are not done yet. The Brewers are still in good shape to win the Central, but the Phillies, this will be interesting to see what they do down the stretch because they have a lot of very winnable games. The Reds and the Cubs, they continue their series in Chicago. The Cubs have won 7 in a row, which is inconceivable, I think, at this point, considering their roster that they're throwing out. But they they've won 7 in a row. They've won 8 of 9. It's a good job there by the Cubs. And the Reds have gone backwards of late. That's not helping them in the wild card race. They're 2-7 their last 9 games. And one of those wins over the Tigers. So the Reds, they will face Wade Miley tonight. Adrian Sampson goes for the Cubs. Miley has been pretty consistent for the Reds this season, 11-5 record, ERA below 3, but he got tagged for 5 earned runs his last time out against the Cardinals. The Dodgers and the Cardinals tonight from St. Louis. And LA still doesn't have a pitcher for tonight. I mean, the Dodgers kind of feel like they throw anybody out and they'll still be favored. But LA undecided. J.A. Happ goes for the Cardinals. Dodgers jumped on the Cardinals last night in the first inning. They won 5-1. And LA, after losing Sunday night in San Francisco, good bounce back for them behind Max Scherzer, is a St. Louis native, played at University of Missouri. And whenever he pitches in St. Louis over the years, if it's with the Dodgers, if it's with the Nationals, he normally pitches well in those games. And LA now 9-1 to the under the last 10. While the Cardinals, look, they've had a couple of losses. And look, they were hanging around the 500 mark for a very long time. But they have 2 losses that are going to come back and bite them. That Pittsburgh defeat, up 3-1 in the 9th, 3-run homer. And then, obviously, the grand slam against Milwaukee, up 5-1 in the 9th, and they lose 6-5 on Sunday. I get that they probably have some games they won they should have lost. But even against Milwaukee at home a few weeks ago, they had a game they were up 4-2 late. The Brewers tied and then won in an extra inning. So St. Louis has had their share, and their bullpen's not great. They've had their share of some blown leads this year. And they're going to end up winning like 80-something games and falling short of the playoffs. The Giants meet the Rockies in Colorado, and this was definitely one that no one would have ever thought was possible. Logan Webb his numbers are unbelievable. And I say unbelievable. I'm not saying that out of, oh, wow, he pitched 1 or 2 good games. His last 10 outings for the Giants, he hasn't allowed more than 2 earned runs in any of them. And the Giants, let's see, 9 straight unders with Webb on the mound and 11-2 the last 13 starts that he has made. He keeps winning every time he goes out there, or at least the Giants keep winning. And the Giants beat the Rockies last night. Chichi Gonzalez goes for Colorado tonight. We know he's not great. Colorado has not lost 3 straight at home since dropping 3 in a row at home to the Dodgers, the opening series of the season. So it's been a while. They normally bounce back from losses, but now they face a guy in Logan Webb who, look, you had Gosman, DeSclafani, they were both on fire. Alex Wood was on fire. Now Logan Webb, he's the hot guy in that San Francisco rotation. And the Giants and the Dodgers keep going back and forth. Giants still up 1 after last night because both teams won, and they're done for the season. LA and San Francisco don't play each other the rest of the way. And San Francisco, with the win Sunday night, 10-9 in the advantage in the series this year. So San Francisco barely won the season series. They have the tiebreaker, and the ball's in their court now to be the National League West champions. They still have a month to go or 3 weeks to go, but the Giants really help themselves with that. Avoid that playoff game. Avoid that wild card game. In the American League, the Twins and the Indians from Cleveland. And the Indians have been a good favorite, been a bad underdog. We saw last night how Minnesota closed as closed as a favorite against Cleveland. Bailey Ober, who went last night, he's actually been the best pitcher for the Twins recently. If you don't know about him, it feels like they win every time he's on the mound, at least the last month and a half or so. So keep an eye on him moving forward with the Twins because they had Kenta Maeda, who got hurt. Pineda got hurt. Barrios got traded. And now they're going with a lot of young guys. Griffin Jackson's been all right for Minnesota. Bailey Ober's someone that you should keep an eye on. John Gant pitches for Minnesota tonight, the former Cardinal who was involved in that J.A. Happ deal from St. Louis. He pitched all right his last time out. Still has struggled since entering the Minnesota rotation. Aaron Savali in for Cleveland. And Savali's making his first start in a few months. He had a broken finger. And he has good numbers. But I feel like Savali should be a little bit of a bigger favorite tonight. The number keeps dropping. The Twins, they played better. They just had that horrible start to the season. And that really put them in a big hole. But Cleveland had that huge win over Boston on Sunday where, not saying they avoided Nick Pivetta, but they faced a spot starter, and Cleveland jumped on him early. Boston came back and tied it. Cleveland ended up winning that game. But Minnesota could have some value tonight as a dog. The Royals and the Orioles. Yep, this was an ALCS back in 2014. Think about that for a second. 2014, the Royals and the Orioles played for the American League pennant. And now they're just playing just to play because it's on the schedule. So Kansas City, they have played better down the stretch. They've won 3 of 4. They had a really good road trip last time out. They got swept by the Indians at home and then beat the White Sox 2 of 3. Somehow the Royals are the White Sox killer. Somehow they have played very well against them. So Jackson Kowar takes the mound for Kansas City tonight. The Royals beat the Orioles yesterday 3-2. And Kowar so far for the Royals, he is winless in 4 starts for Kansas City this year. He's a slight favorite. And the Orioles send out Alexander Wells, the left-hander. The Orioles were coming off those back-to-back wins by 1 run apiece or against the Yankees. They lose yesterday. Wells, an ERA of 7.71. So pick your poison in that game. All right, speaking of the Yankees, they lost to the Blue Jays yesterday, and they're heavy favorites again coming up tonight against Toronto. And the Blue Jays have had some success against the Yankees this year, but tonight they face Garrett Cole. And Garrett Cole, the favorite to win the AL Cy Young. He was the favorite to start the season, struggled, went on the COVID list, kind of fell off. It was Lance Lynn's award to lose. Lynn had some struggles. He got hurt. And now Cole is back in the driver's seat to win the American League Cy Young. Robbie Ray's still hanging around from Toronto. You're not going to see Cole and Ray tonight. It's Cole and Steven Matz. But the Yankees won 13 straight. They have lost 7 of 9 since then. So the Yankees going backwards at the wrong time, where Tampa Bay is still winning the AL East, and you have this 3-team race for 2 spots between the Red Sox, A's, and Yankees for the wild card, because it's going to be Astros, White Sox, Rays as the division winners. And then you're getting nobody from the Central to compete for that. Mariners probably fall short, but it'll be the A's, Red Sox, Yankees. 2 of those 3 will make it. And Toronto, of course, who kind of fell off the map, they've won 8 of 9. They swept Oakland. They had that crazy win on Friday, 11-10. Toronto scored the last 4 games, 37 runs. And they have Steven Matz going tonight against Garrett Cole. So that should be an entertaining game. The other American League East matchup, the Red Sox and the Rays, they had another crazy game yesterday at Fenway. And tough loss for Boston. I mean, that was really a killer for them. That the Red Sox, now they've blown a few games late to Cleveland last Sunday. Not this past Sunday, the previous Sunday, because they played Cleveland back-to-back weekends. But they had a 4-0 lead at Cleveland, lost 7-5. Yesterday against Tampa Bay, with Chris Sale on the mound, they're up 7-1. Tampa Bay ties it at 10. They get inside the park homer in the 9th, and then or ties it at 9, excuse me. And then Tampa Bay won it in extra innings, 11-10. Just inexcusable if you're the Red Sox. That I understand that it was the Rays that they lost to, but you can't be blowing these big leads. And they did that. So Tampa Bay, they maintain their spot atop the AL East. Drew Rasmussen goes for the Rays tonight. Eduardo Rodriguez for the Red Sox. Rodriguez just beat the Rays last week at Tropicana Field as a nice underdog. Now he's it's like a pick 'em. I think Boston's moving out to a favorite. But again, the Red Sox, you can't be losing that game. Up by 6 runs. Mariners and the Astros from Houston. And last night, the Astros took care of the Mariners. They blasted them 11-2. That's the 3rd time that the Mariners have gone to Houston in the last 2 weeks or so and just gotten run by Houston. So that ended a 5-game winning streak for the Mariners. They took 2 from Houston at home. They shut them out twice. They swept Arizona. And look, Seattle's going to fall short of the playoffs. They're 75-63. They're actually 5.5 back of the Astros. I don't think that they're going to catch the I just think they'll fall short, the Mariners. I really don't believe that they will end up getting in. I mean, right now, look, I said Oakland. Let me just clarify one thing. The Yankees are up a half game over the Red Sox for the number 1 wild card spot. Boston's number 2. Then Toronto's 3 back because they've gone on a massive run. Seattle's 3 back, and Oakland's 3.5 back. About a week ago, or before Oakland kind of spun out of control a little bit, it was the Yankees, Red Sox, and A's. And Toronto and Seattle were hanging around. But now that both these teams have gone on a run, you can now throw Toronto and Seattle in with Oakland, trying to catch the Yankees and Red Sox. And for Seattle, I'm not going to blame their schedule because they played Arizona this past weekend. And I said this before about the Mariners. When you're playing teams like Texas and Arizona, you got to win these games. And they've done that. I got to give the Mariners credit. They swept Texas on the road. They swept Arizona on the road recently. Those are games you have to win if you're the Mariners. You have any shot at going to the playoffs because you're going to draw Houston and Oakland and teams like that are going to be tougher series. Now, losing 3 or 4 to Kansas City at home is a bit of a backbreaker for Seattle. But now they get Logan Gilbert going tonight for the Mariners, and he pitched really well against the Astros last time out. Went 5 innings, went opposite Jake Odorizzi, who is going tonight for Houston. And Gilbert, a sizable underdog here. Gilbert had a really good stretch earlier in the season, fell off, but should have some confidence going into tonight's games. He just pitched well against the Astros last week. White Sox and the A's out in Oakland, playoff rematch. And remember, Oakland knocked out Chicago last year in the postseason. So the first time the White Sox back out in the Bay Area since then. And James Caprillion goes for Oakland this evening. And they have a young guy in Lambert going for Chicago. But the White Sox took 3 or 4 from the A's at home back in August. And Chicago is still in very good shape to win the AL Central. They lost 2 of 3 to Kansas City, but they're all right. Where Oakland, this is a critical stretch now because they lost all 3 at Toronto. They had some blown games against Detroit at home back in late August. Oakland gets Chicago here. It's going to be a very tough series. Then they have their next 3 series against the Rangers, at the Royals, and at the Angels. So if Oakland can find a way to not fall apart in this series against Chicago, maybe take 2 of 3, Oakland can still go on that run that Toronto has gone on, that Seattle's gone on, that it could be Oakland's turn because they played the Yankees and the Giants at home and struggled against them. So that wasn't easy at all. All right, let's go to the 3 interleague games and we'll be done. Tigers and the Pirates, they meet in Pittsburgh. The Pirates beat the Tigers yesterday 6-3. And look, this is the second cousin of Orioles, this matchup. Willie Peralta goes for Detroit. Peters for the Pirates. Pittsburgh and Detroit, nearly a pick 'em. Flip a coin. Rangers and Diamondbacks out in Arizona. And Texas actually has played well last few days. They took the final 2 games against the Angels. Zach Gallen goes for Arizona tonight. Just swept by the Mariners at home. But Gallen has not won a home game this season, which is amazing. He pitched well at Colorado and at Philadelphia. Lost to San Diego's last time out. He's had some draws with the Padres and the Giants and the Dodgers. He's faced some of the big guns. Spencer Howard's been terrible for the Rangers. I actually like Arizona in the spot, even though they're a heavy favorite. And speaking of heavy favorites, the Padres, look at that lane, 320 against the Angels tonight at Petco Park. Blake Snell and Packy Naughton, your pitchers. But Snell's been great at home, but, man, that's a massive number to lay, especially against a team that's lost 2 straight to the Rangers at home. Everyone would kind of doubt them. But there's really no pressure on the Angels now. They're not going to the playoffs. The Padres have all the pressure to keep winning, to be in the to get in the wild card. And right now, San Diego's up a game on the Reds. So San Diego has a lot to play for, but to lay 320 is borderline ridiculous. So that's our look at Major League Baseball. My thanks to Mark Franco and Jonathan Jorcin for joining us to talk NFL and college football. And we'll have plenty more of NFL and college talk going throughout the week as we look ahead to week 1 of the NFL. I'm very excited about this. I know you are, and even week 2 of college football, but week 1 of the NFL, get Cowboys, Bucks, and so many fun matchups on Sunday. Get Packers, Saints. That game moved to Jacksonville due to Hurricane Ida, which hit New Orleans. So a little bit of a different vibe there as opposed to playing in the Superdome. But we'll talk about all these games coming up later in the week. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching today's edition of the Daily Insider. In case you missed any of it, you could find it on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider, as well as on VegasInsider.com on our homepage. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday for the next edition of the Daily Insider at noon Eastern. I'm Kevin Rogers, and as always, best of luck with your bets.